Time does not ask whether you are ready to grow up. It just keeps moving, and you learn to move around other people's moods the way a river bends around stones. You notice early that there are two versions of you, the one who feels everything intensely and the one who is allowed to be seen. The first one is impulsive, hungry, jealous, angry, loud. The second one is quiet, helpful, agreeable, such a good kid. You discover, without anyone spelling it out, that certain parts of you make adults uncomfortable. Questions that come out too sharp, tears that last too long, anger that doesn't switch off on command. Each time you show one of those parts, the room cools. Voices harden. Love steps half a step back. You feel it like a draft under a door. So you begin a project no one asked you to start. You carefully trim yourself down to the version that seems safest to love. You rush to take empty plates from the table before anyone hints. You apologize first, even when you're not sure what you did wrong. You laugh at jokes that sting, because it's easier than saying, "That hurt." It works. Adults talk about you in the third person, right in front of you. He's so considerate. He never causes trouble. He's mature for his age. Their words are meant as praise, and they land in you like proof that your strategy is correct. If being nice keeps the house peaceful, then niceness becomes your armor, your currency, your whole identity. On the rare days when you can't hold it in and something raw slips out, a slammed door, a shouted no, tears you couldn't swallow, the reactions are sharp enough to etch themselves into your memory. After everything we do for you, don't you dare talk to me like that. Maybe you should go to your room until you can behave. The message underneath is simple. Your love is conditional, and the condition is your compliance. You start to hide not just your reactions, but your desires. You put back toys you want because you see the price tag and your parents' tired face. You say, "I'm fine," when plans change in ways that disappoint you, because you don't want to be difficult. You train yourself to want less loudly, to need less visibly. It feels, at first, like kindness to them. You don't yet see what it is doing to you. By the time you are old enough to cross a street alone, you are already an expert at crossing emotional streets without causing accidents. You look both ways before speaking. You check the weather in other people's eyes before deciding which version of yourself is allowed out. You believe you are just being good. You don't realize that you are slowly learning to disappear. Teenage years arrive without asking who you are underneath the politeness. School becomes a bigger world, full of louder kids, sharper jokes, clearer hierarchies. You quietly gravitate toward the role you already know, the reliable one, the safe one, the friend people come to when they're tired of everyone else's drama. You help with homework, just this once that becomes every week. You listen to long rants about parents, teachers, exes, crushes. You lend money you're not sure you'll get back. "Thank you, you're a lifesaver," they say, and something in you glows each time, because being useful feels dangerously close to being wanted. Somewhere in this swirl of lockers and group chats and after-school walks, you develop your first big crush. Not on the person who treats you like decoration, but on the one who treats you like a diary. They text you late at night when they're sad. They call you when their relationships explode. They fall asleep on your shoulder during movies and say, "You're the only one who really understands me." You become an expert in their favorite songs, their family problems, the exact way their voice sounds when they're about to cry. You offer rides, favors, surprise gifts, the last slice of pizza. You never offer the one thing that would be honest. "I don't want to be your emergency therapist. I want to be the person you choose first." Instead, you invent an unspoken deal no one else signed. "If I just keep being there, if I keep listening, if I never pressure you, if I prove over and over that I'm not like those other guys or those other girls, then one day you'll wake up, look at me differently, and finally choose me." This is your first covert contract. You give and give, but you don't name the price you're quietly charging. You expect them to pay it anyway, in attention, in loyalty, in love. So when they excitedly tell you about a new crush, it hits your chest like a stone. When they get into another relationship and still call you to complain about it, you feel both needed and insulted. You stay up late talking them through fights with someone else's partner, then stare at your ceiling thinking, "After everything I do for you, how can you not see me?" You don't say that out loud. You double down on being supportive. You tell yourself that real love is patient, that one day this loyalty will be rewarded. But slowly, a bitter taste grows at the back of your throat. It tastes like swallowed no-s and unsent messages, like affection turned into a quiet, tightening knot. On the outside, you are the perfect nice friend, always available, endlessly understanding, never demanding. Inside, a different story is being written. One where kindness is not a free gift, but a currency you're spending in a store that never agreed to sell you what you're secretly trying to buy. Adulthood arrives not with a clear line, but with a series of small signatures. You sign your first lease. You sign work contracts. You sign up for responsibilities that sound like freedom and feel, in practice, like heavier versions of the same old expectations. In relationships, you slip almost automatically into the role you know best. You offer to drive across the city to see them, even when you're exhausted. You cancel your plans more often than theirs. You say, whatever you want is fine, so many times that you forget what you wanted in the first place. At first, they love it. You're easy. You're understanding. You're not dramatic. Compared to their past partners, you feel like a calm harbor. Someone who doesn't pick fights, doesn't disappear, doesn't demand too much. But harbors are for resting, not for living. Over time, something shifts. They start making more decisions without asking you. They vent to you about other people, but rarely ask how your day actually felt. You notice that when there's a choice to be made, your comfort is considered last, if at all. You feel it in little scenes. Sitting in a restaurant you didn't choose, watching a show you don't like, agreeing to plans that drain you, laughing off comments that sting because you don't want to ruin the mood. You tell yourself this is what love looks like: compromise, sacrifice, putting the other person first. You ignore the quiet detail that you are almost never first. You're not even second. You're the one who rearranges themselves so everyone else can stay where they are. When resentment leaks out, it doesn't look like a clean boundary. It looks like delayed replies, forced jokes, passive-aggressive jokes that land heavier than you meant. It looks like saying no, it's fine, in a tone that clearly says it isn't, then punishing them in your head for not decoding your tone perfectly. You still don't say, I need you to meet me halfway. You still don't say, I'm angry, or this hurts, or I want something different. You just work harder at being easy to love, as if love were a test you keep failing by not trying hard enough. One day, maybe without warning, it ends. They tell you they don't feel the spark anymore, or that you're too nice, or that they can't feel your passion, or that they feel more like they're with a roommate than a partner. You hear their words as a verdict on your entire strategy. You gave everything, and somehow it still wasn't enough. Worse, you weren't enough in exactly the way you've been trying your whole life to be: kind, patient, accommodating. Standing there with your heart in your throat, you don't think, maybe I should have been more honest, more direct, more myself. You think, I must be even nicer next time, so they'll never want to leave. Work becomes the next stage where your niceness quietly turns into a trap. You arrive early, leave late, answer messages on weekends just to be helpful. You volunteer for the tasks no one wants, tell yourself it's good experience, and swallow the frustration when credit drifts toward louder people. You notice a pattern. When something urgent appears, your name is the first on everyone's lips. Do you mind taking this on? I know you're busy, but you're the only one I can really count on. Each request is coded in flattery, and your chest warms with that familiar hit. Being needed feels so close to being valued that you mistake one for the other. You tell yourself that if you keep saying yes, someone up there will notice. The manager, the director, the mysterious they who decide who gets promoted. You imagine them watching cameras, secretly scoring everyone's effort, waiting to surprise you with opportunities because you never complain. Reality is less romantic. People assume you're coping because you never say you're not. They assume you're happy because you say no problem faster than you check how you actually feel. The work that burns you out becomes just what you do, while others who speak up and negotiate get labeled assertive and leadership material. The same thing happens in your social life. You're the one people call when they need to move furniture, or need a ride from the airport at dawn, or need someone to listen to them cry about a breakup for the fourth time. You rarely call anyone when you're the one falling apart. You tell yourself you don't want to be a burden. You don't admit that you're not sure anyone would show up. On the outside, you're the dependable friend, the solid coworker, the person others describe as so sweet and always there. On the inside, a quiet tiredness starts to spread, like ink and water. You begin to feel like an endlessly open tab that no one intends to pay. You don't explode yet. Instead, you retreat into fantasies where you finally disappear. You picture quitting your job without warning, turning off your phone, watching people realize how much you actually did for them only when you're gone. In these daydreams, your absence is finally loud enough to be noticed in a way your presence never was. You never say that out loud. You show up the next morning, on time, coffee in hand. You smile, say sure, I can handle it, and add another quiet stone to the pile inside your chest. Every strategy breaks under enough weight, even the strategy of being endlessly nice. For you, the breaking doesn't arrive as one huge disaster, but as a cluster of smaller collisions all hitting at once. Someone at work dumps a last-minute project on you and disappears. A friend forgets plans you rearranged your whole week for. A partner or situationship sends a casual text that makes it clear you were never as important to them as they were to you. None of these things would be catastrophic on their own. Together, they land on the same sore spot you've been protecting for years. This time, something inside you doesn't move out of the way. The of course, no problem catches in your throat. The easy smile doesn't fully form. You feel heat where you're used to feeling numbness. It's not a noble, controlled anger. It's messy, clumsy, years old. You start to leak, not in the form of clear boundaries, but in sideways bursts. A sarcastic comment that lands heavier than you intended. A joke that isn't really a joke. A long, stony silence where you used to rush in with reassurance. People around you look confused. You're acting different. Why are you being so sensitive? You've never had a problem with this before. They say this as if the problem just appeared, not realizing it has been growing quietly every time you said, "It's fine," while your jaw ached from clenching. One day, you don't show up the way you promised. You ignore the group chat. You let a call ring out. You send a blunt message at work or in a relationship that reads colder than you meant it and hotter than you've ever dared. For the first time, you become the one who disappoints, not the one endlessly absorbing disappointment. It doesn't feel empowering. It feels like losing control. Guilt and anger collide in your chest, each insisting the other is wrong to exist. A part of you screams, "See me, finally." Another whispers, "You're proving they were right not to rely on you." In the aftermath of one of these small implosions, you find yourself alone, on your bed, in your car, in a late-night kitchen, staring at a version of yourself you don't quite recognize. You replay the scenes, trying to decide if you were the villain or the victim. You don't easily admit to yourself that you have been both. The person who overgave in silence, and the person who finally snapped without warning. It's around this time, when the old pattern is too painful to continue and not yet fully broken, that a different kind of thought sneaks in. What if the world isn't cruel for failing to repay deals it never agreed to? What if I am the one writing invisible contracts and calling it being nice? Once you see the pattern, even a little, it's hard to unsee. You start noticing how often your kindness has a quiet condition attached. If I listen to you, you'll listen to me. If I never say no, you'll never leave. If I'm endlessly understanding, you'll finally understand me. Somewhere, through a book, a video, a therapist, a late-night conversation, you stumble across words like nice guy syndrome, people-pleasing, covert contracts. It's like reading your own diary written by a stranger. Traits you thought were unique quirks are listed as common patterns. Avoiding conflict, hiding anger, doing favors, secretly hoping for affection in return. For a while, the realization doesn't make you stronger. It makes you ashamed. You look back at old scenes and see them with brutal clarity. All the times you called yourself the better person, while silently keeping score. All the moments you felt morally superior to people who at least were honest about what they wanted. You don't like this version of the story, where you're not just a victim of other people's selfishness, but a participant in your own disappointment. And yet, buried underneath the shame is a thin line of relief. If this is a pattern, it might be changeable. If this is something learned, it might be unlearned. If your niceness is not your nature, but your strategy, you might not be trapped in it forever. So you experiment with something that feels small from the outside and enormous from the inside. You start saying no, not to everything, not dramatically cutting everyone off, but to one extra task you can't actually handle, to one favor that makes your stomach knot, to one invitation you'd have accepted just to avoid disappointing someone. The first no feels like stepping off a cliff. You wait for the backlash you've always imagined, the anger, the withdrawal of love, the confirmation that boundaries make you unlovable. Sometimes people do react badly. Their comfort depended on your compliance. But sometimes nothing catastrophic happens at all. The world doesn't end. Some people simply say, okay, and adjust. You start trying the even scarier thing. Honest, I want. I'd rather do this instead. I actually don't enjoy that. I need some time alone tonight. The words feel clumsy in your mouth, like a language you were never taught as a child. You stumble. You over-explain. You apologize too much. But you keep trying. With each small act of honesty, a few things happen at once. Certain relationships thin out or fall away. They were held together mostly by what you could provide. It hurts. But there is also a strange lightness in no longer having to earn the right to exist in them. Other relationships shift, but survive. People who genuinely care about you start responding to your real edges, not just your soft corners. They don't always get it right, but they at least have something true to work with now. You realize slowly that being nice was never the problem. Weaponized niceness, fearful niceness, niceness used as a shield and a bargaining chip. That is what has been hollowing you out. What you're learning now is something different. How to be kind without disappearing. How to be generous without keeping secret invoices. How to stay in the room when your own needs take up space. Years pass in the background while you focus on learning this new, awkward way of being. You don't wake up one day as a completely different person. You just notice, slowly, that certain scenes are no longer playing out the way they used to. You're in a relationship again, or something close to it. There's a moment where, in the past, you would have swallowed your discomfort and smiled. Now you hear yourself saying, actually, that doesn't work for me. And the room doesn't explode. Your heart pounds, your palms sweat, but nothing shatters. You realize that safety built on self-erasure was never real safety to begin with. At work, you start drawing lines in places that used to be wide open. I can take this on, but I'll need to drop something else. I'm not available this weekend. You still contribute, still care, but you stop trying to prove your worth by being endlessly available. Some colleagues adjust. A few quietly drift toward people who will say yes without pause. You let them. You are done auditioning for roles that require you to have no needs. In friendships, you experiment with reaching out when you're the one struggling. It feels wrong at first, like you're breaking a rule you didn't know you agreed to. You send a message that isn't "how are you," but "I'm not okay today." Some replies are shallow or delayed, but a handful land with real presence. You start to see who is capable of meeting you, not just being met by you. You still slip. Old habits return when you're tired or scared. You catch yourself offering too much, explaining too much, shrinking to keep the peace. The difference now is that you notice. You feel the old tightness in your chest and think, ah, there you are. Awareness doesn't erase the pattern, but it gives you a choice you didn't have before. As the years layer themselves on, you start to look back at your life with a softer lens. You no longer see only the nice guy who never got what he wanted. You see a child who learned very early that love could be withdrawn, a teenager who tried to earn affection with loyalty, an adult who used self-sacrifice as a survival strategy because he didn't know another way. You feel grief for all the moments you betrayed yourself, for the nights you stayed up listening to someone who would never have done the same. for the relationships where you performed the role of perfect partner and never let anyone meet the real you, for the promotions and chances you didn't even ask for because you were waiting to be chosen. But there is also pride, quiet and real, for every small rebellion against that script, for the first time you said no and didn't apologize afterward, for the person you walked away from when you realized they only loved your usefulness, for the day you told friend, "I'm angry with you," and the friendship didn't end, it deepened. Somewhere along the way, people still call you nice, but it lands differently now. They're talking about your kindness, not your compliance. You know the difference. You know that real kindness includes yourself. That real generosity has edges. That real love cannot exist where one person is allowed to need and the other is not. If someone asked you, at the end of it all, what your life as the nice guy taught you, you wouldn't say, "Nice guys always finish last." You would say something truer and harder. Nice guys who never learned to be honest with themselves finish exhausted. The goal was never to stop being kind. The goal was to stop using kindness as a way to avoid the risk of being real. Looking back, you don't hate the boy who started the story. You understand him. He did what he could with what he knew. If you could speak to him now, you wouldn't tell him to be colder or tougher. You'd tell him this: you are allowed to want. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to disappoint people and still be worthy of love. You never had to earn your right to exist by being endlessly nice.